we need advice. New EB-5 investors that are looking at getting started, give them one piece of advice on what not to do.
Don't be greedy. And what I mean by that is I like to tell my clients that EB-5 is not a typical investment program. The purpose of this program is not to make the most amount of money that you could possibly make. It's an immigration program where you are looking at immigration benefits. The interest that you're receiving is your green card, permanent residency in the US, and the security of funds.
First of all, I want to say I hate Niral for stealing my answer. When you do EB-5, I think your mistake is it's not how you get rich. There are programs, investments that you can get rich, but you don't want sexy, right? You're not trying to do Bitcoin. What you are really looking for, ideally, is more like a bond, something more stable, right? There's ways to make money, right? But EB-5 is not the best way to do it. So I agree with Niral. You want something more stable, something that ideally will have the jobs very predictable and basically in the bag already. That's your ideal situation.
Greg Sheehan, former USCIS adjudicator, brand new EB-5 investors looking at the program. If you had one piece of advice on one thing not to do, what do you tell that investor?
Oh, you know where I'm going with this. Don't do a direct investment. It's so much more management, so much more risk, so much more could go wrong than just your financials going backwards. You could get deported if you don't sustain and create the jobs that you're supposed to. Your whole family and all that money gets tied up in something that you don't realize is as bad as it is. Anybody can run a business on their own, and you should do that if you're an entrepreneur. Please contribute to the economy that way. Create tax dollars and do that. But I would avoid tying it to a direct EB-5 investment without doing a lot of work.
He used the D word, direct. Not deported. We don't say that here. Steve, piece of advice. Steve Pazan, also former USCIS adjudicator and man behind the curtain. If you had one piece of advice for an EB-5 investor that's brand new looking at the program, and you had one advice of one thing not to do, what would it be?
Well, just from a nuts and bolts perspective, at the very beginning of a person's journey, don't change anything about your life. Don't make assumptions about what to do with your investments until you've spoken to somebody in the field who has expertise, who can counsel you on the best way to move your money so that you don't create technical problems for your petition before the experts in the field, like the people that you've just talked to, have a chance to see who you are. You are who you are. You got your money and your assets from the legitimate activities that you've been engaging in for a couple of years. Leave it to the experts and the people who want to help you get to where you want to go to marshal that and to create the story that's going to be persuasive for the agency.
Picking projects is one thing, but the second half of success is all on the investor. It's source of funds. So if you had one piece of advice on prepping source of funds to make it easy for approval, what's one piece of advice you would give?
The one piece of advice, in addition to what I just said, would be to work with somebody who's just done it many times before. Greg here next to me can talk about it, but the adjudicator has a certain mindset and comes from a certain place. And people like Greg, myself, and the other guys on the panel, or people you're talking to here today, have an idea of how they think. And so we've got to get inside their heads and try to give them something that will enhance the credibility of the presentation. The other thing we have to remember is that we're always looking at the past. We are recommending to you today how to do things that will be adjudicated sometime in the future. People have to remember, it's very important to remember, that we can't predict or guarantee anything. And all we can do is the best that we can do based on a lot of experience. This is one of the rare situations in my professional life where I would actually encourage people not to go with the new guy or the person with no experience, but to stick with the people that have done it before. By nature, I tend to support, the upstart, the guy who's just starting out and getting in, the underdog. But there's no room for the underdog in his particular profession. That's why we're here talking to the Behring organization, and that's my plug for you. But no, I
checks in the mail.
Yeah, the checks out. But I'm not kidding. I'm absolutely serious.
Perfect. No, thank you.
Source of funds comes down to how well it's presented, not how much you make. Where it came from matters, and how you support it matters, not how you feel about it in your experience, where you know how much money you have in the bank, you know how you earned it, and you can tell somebody, hey, here's what I did for a living, here's the business I started, here's how we made our receipts, here's what we got involved with, here's who our partnerships were. You can explain that, but from a source of funds point of view, what am I missing?
who are you?
Right.
Right? Who
Yeah.
am I?
Yeah.
And that's the narrative, right? Would you say, Greg, that you
Yeah.
have to present?
You need the narrative. You need to get from A to B to C in a credible way. And it's not as easy as you would think, because when an adjudicator comes in and sees somebody maybe from a new country or a new part of a certain country where things are a little bit different and their expectations from what they've seen from Vietnam change from the first 5 cases they've seen to the next 5, and things are different, they need you to bridge the gap of their understanding.
Niral, from the immigration attorney's perspective, what do you want to see, and what is your advice to start off clean toward an approval with an investor source of funds?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to tell my clients on initial consult that, source of funds is not theoretical. It is absolutely 100% fact intensive. It's what you can prove on paper. So, they ask me, well, what sources should I use? What sort of documents? I'm like, how about this? You tell me where your money's coming from, how did it get here, and can you back it up through paper documentation? And if the answer is yes, then we probably have a solid source of funds.
So I think part of it is when we do source of funds, when people do source of funds, what I notice is a lot of investors, initially you have some sort of fear. You have almost some sort of embarrassment because people are a little bit hesitant, right? Either you don't want to review your entire portfolio, or you feel like there's documents missing, or it's not a perfect source of funds. My standard advice I tell everybody is, look, there are no perfect source of funds. In the 5,000 or so cases we've seen, we've never seen perfect source of funds. What we do need, though, is for the investor to be able to help USCIS understand that this is not another foreign name on a case file. We want a narrative from you. We want your story of your family, where you earned it through a declaration, through an affidavit. Not only will this help USCIS understand your background, your family, your intentions, and everything else, it also will help actually fill in any gaps that you have in your source of funds. So we think it's very helpful to start with that, right? Remove the foreignness from it.